And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of The Vinnie Eastwood Show, broadcasting on AmericanFreedomRadio.com for your listening pleasure. Tonight, we have a woman who does not work construction, although her name would suggest it. It's Angela Forman from the Gourmet Soap Kitchen in Wagga Wagga, named after the mating call of a cane toad. Wagga Wagga. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Vinnie. How you going? Nice to talk to you online, on radio. It's been a couple of years. What's it been, a year and a half, 2 years?
It has been, and we have been enjoying your soap products ever since. It's funny, my wife was just saying, hey, Vinnie, we're about to run out of Angela's wonderful soap.
Package ready to go off because you can't live without it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to stay clean. Especially if your job is to deal with the filth of society. So, speaking of which, there's been a long time between shows with you, and we have one segment here to run a brief catch-up. What would you like to talk about today?
First of all, I don't know if you want to fill people in on what happened with my daughter's chemical poisoning with the Department of Education in Australia, which we talked about is probably the same in New Zealand because they seem to follow each other. But my daughter Bridget was poisoned by school cleaning chemicals, and still after I proved it to them, showed them the MSDSs and everything else, they're still using it. And we've been waiting now, it's now the end of the term, the school term, and we're still waiting to get into school because she's developed such a sensitivity after 3 years that she can no longer enter the school without having an anaphylactic-like reaction to these extreme chemicals you're talking about. Chemicals that form formaldehyde when they come into contact with water or sweat. So that's what children are exposed to. So why they haven't done anything, we don't know. But yeah, I'm still fighting it, and not just for me, but for other parents.
What's the source of this chemical contamination?
Well, the source, do you want to know? Well, Joss Cleaning Chemicals bring in these chemicals to Australia. They buy them from somebody, and I'll name them. They're Joss. They can do whatever they like, but I'm naming them. They have most of the contracts for all the cleaning of all the schools in Australia, and they also have other subsidiary companies that they claim aren't theirs, but they're actually, anyway, that's another story for another day. But they insist on bringing these chemicals that are really toxic to children, and even though I've proved it, they're still using them. And the education department, I go from the minister back to the principal, back to the education director, and they keep sending me around. And regardless of what I say or what I've proved, they're still using them on children in schools. So
you were asking what the reason why they wouldn't take them out is. I would say that obviously some company has made a lot of money off of putting it in the schools, and they don't want their money to be taken away. Isn't that pretty straightforward?
Yeah, that sounds like what I thought, but then they could use a cheaper alternative, but they still insist on using this other one that is toxic and banned in most of the world. Why would they do that? I don't know, Vinnie. We know a lot about what's going on in the world at the moment.
Well, if a company wants to make a profit, it's at its best advice not to sell its products as cheap as it possibly can. It's supposed to sell them for what people will pay for them.
Yeah, that's probably right. But the fact is that I proved that they were toxic. Not by me. I proved by their own MSDSs that they produce formaldehyde in the classroom, and they still insist on using it, which is my biggest question as to why. And so I don't know.
Avoiding liability, perhaps. A lot of children have gotten sick over the years, and suddenly they'll have somebody to blame and or sue or hold responsible for it.
Yeah, no, or they just go, oh, we didn't know. You'd think that my logical thing as a parent would be that they would say, oh, we didn't know. Well, okay, we'll change it, but they're still using those same chemicals, which makes me wonder exactly what their agenda is. You know?
Well,
I think it goes far deeper. As I dig, it goes far deeper than that.
Logic as a parent probably not a whole lot of use here. Logic of a psychopath, on the other hand.
Exactly. Psychopath is what I'm stating, that I think they're psychopaths, but and they can say what they like, but I can prove they're psychopaths, because you'd think that 2 years ago, after I brought all the information to them, they would do something about it, and there are cheaper alternatives for them as well, and they could do it, but they still insist on using this terrible toxins in the schools.
But there's not too much development on this story. It's simply just going through this long, drawn-out process, isn't it?
And children are sick, and people don't know why the children are sick at the schools. They think that they've got flus, they think they've got depression, anxiety. Then you go into the unflue gas heating. The whole thing, to me, it's a soft kill, but that's my opinion. I'm not stating that's a fact, but my opinion is it's a soft kill. And
Maybe
it gets sick.
maybe the best target is not the people who could technically have the authority to remove the chemicals, but your target should probably be the parents whose children are currently affected by said chemicals, and getting them on side and then making some kind of big group effort to expose this and hold these people to account.
It's funny, because I go through the same thing as you, is that I've tried to do that, and parents say, "You're doing a great job, Angela. I really appreciate it. Keep it up." But they don't do anything. They don't go down and get the MSDSs. They don't pursue what I've given the information, go down and ask for them. And actually, what you might know, since the last time we spoke, parents aren't allowed to go in to get the MSDSs from their schools anymore, whereas they're readily available to fire brigades and ambulance and all that sort of stuff if something happens. But if a parent goes in there and asks for the MSDSs, where I was able to do it previously before, suddenly they click on a thing, "Oh, I need to speak to the principal." So I've had several parents that have tried to do that, and they're not allowed to get the MSDSs to find out what they're using in their own child's school. And they're passed on through the same. So there's a whole rigmarole, whereas I was able to walk in there, get the MSDSs, and have a look at them and go, "Oh my God," because my background in soap making, I know what chemicals and toxins, and that's what I do for a living, is removing toxins from people's lives. They're not able to do that anymore, so they've put another thing in there, so parents aren't allowed to actually access the MSDSs. I don't know if that's legal, I don't know, but all I know is they're not able to get them.
Well, as far as I know, any barrier to justice is completely legal.
It's just disgusting, isn't it? I mean, but the interesting thing is, say that, about parents. I had the local paper, they've got a new editor, and he did a great job on a story, because Bridget's been waiting, till the end of the term to go back to school. All they had to do was remove the chemicals. That's it, and replace them with a non-toxic chemical, because she's become anaphylactic to those chemicals. And basically it's like anyone who's overexposed, they get to the point where you can't tolerate it anymore, which means her body's actually working really well, and it's saying, "Don't expose me to these anymore," and it'll react really badly when it's around them. And the editor to the local newspaper here in Walborough has done a story, and it's quite interesting. And I can read out to you some of the things he said. He said that at a time when students aren't even able to bring peanut butter into some schools due to allergy hyper-awareness, it's mystifying while the department cleaners aren't obliged to do a different cleaning product. And then he said, when the advertiser quizzed the department about the issue, a spokesman did his best Trappist monk impersonation. And they can't believe it either. So this is a new bunch of, people coming through to the media. They'll probably be shut down like the rest of them, but, at least we got a couple of good things put in the paper. So
has this been reported before, and the people who reported it got shut down?
Yeah, no. After the last show that we did, it was supposed to be on, was it Today, Tonight or A Current Affair? They did a whole story, and they were saying I was Erin Brockovich of Australia, which is kind of an insult to me because I'm not a big fan of hers anymore. But that's between me and my thoughts. But the editor actually said to me that if I write the story, he can print it. But he said, I have to write it because there's government lawyers in every office, and they tell us what we can and can't say and what we can and can't print. He was rung up by somebody to shut down that story about your daughter and the chemical poisoning. I proved it. I didn't prove it. Their own MSDS has proved it. I didn't have to prove it, and I had all the evidence. And some terrible illnesses were in Bridget's school. And I can't prove it. One child died, and two children are dying, or at least one is. And they just go down the road that, at the same things that Bridget had, where she wasn't able to walk properly. She was covered in chemical burn. They didn't have the chemical burn. It wasn't the cleaner's fault. He didn't know it was toxic. I didn't know it was toxic, and it's what I do for a living. So, yeah, I'm calling out. I'd like all the parents to go down to their school and demand the MSDSs, because to just sit back and say, well, Angela will do it, that's not enough. We need multiple people to come down and say, what are you using in my child's school? But the interesting thing was that I got lots of good comments after that story, but other people said, oh, who does she think? Does she think she's special because she could go down and spray her child's desk with vinegar? She thinks she's special. And I'm like, what? Your child is sitting there at that desk exposed to those chemicals, but they just don't get it. It's like, I don't know, a bit more about the blindness. People just don't get it. They don't.
Well,
I don't know.
in today's society, it pays to never underestimate people's ignorance.
I know. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
No, it's totally believable if you've watched television or listened to talk radio in the last 10 years on the mainstream spectrum. It's like, yeah, I understand.
To me, it was shocking, because I thought I'd go to the education department and I'd show them. It took me 2.5 years to work out what was wrong. And that's what I do for a living, is toxic-free living. And when I finally found the MSDSs, someone said, go down to the school, get the MSDSs. I thought they'd go, oh my God, Angela, let's remove them. But as you know, I copped it. And they'd say to me, have you got deep pockets if you want to sue us? And they had these evil, horrible people at the head of the education department. I can't really understand their mental thinking, but they're psychopathic as far as I'm concerned. And you had the other women standing around saying, why don't we use vinegar? Why don't we use natural cleaners? Why don't we use it? And they just, no, we've got to, prove it. That's what they say to me. Prove it, Angela, prove it. And Peter Brabham was and I'll name him on radio, was the educational regional director at the time. And he just tried to destroy me. And I ended up nearly having a nervous breakdown trying to deal with it. But since then I've gotten stronger, so I'm able to take the fight on again. And Bridget wants to go to school. She's in year 7 now. Well, she hasn't been able to attend school, but she's in year 7 now and she wants to go to school, and she's really smart,
Well, it sounds exactly like you're dealing with a psychopath, because that's how they operate. It's like, no, this wall of denial, and then this wall of revenge and consequences for taking them on. All right, it's almost like they're trying to cast a circle of painful protection around them to shield themselves from anybody doing anything to them or with them that they don't want. And it will destroy you going head to head with these people every single time. Every single time. I have never seen anybody take these kind of people head on who hasn't suffered immense amounts of anxiety or trauma or financial stress or having problems with their kids and goodness knows what. These scum destroy lives on a professional level.
Psychopaths, that's what they do. They love it. And they don't get it when you tell them. And I just thought I'd go to them and show them and say, oh, look at these, and prove it, Angela. I said, no, I don't have to prove it. It's right there. And they kept on, prove it. And I'm just like, just disgusting. And to me, my personal opinion, and they can take me to court over it, I don't really give a stuff anymore, because I'm going to win. And I'm not after any compensation, never was. All I want is the chemicals removed, not only for my own child, but for other children. And they just don't want to do it. And that makes me wonder what on earth is the agenda behind it. And I started digging into the backgrounds and who imports the chemicals, and I found out who imports them. So you start digging, and then you find out a whole lot of other stuff. Once you start unpeeling the onion, it gets deep and it goes back to the same people. You know how it works, Vinny.
Yeah, it's called fractal scumbaggery. Everything's a holographic projection of everything else. So it doesn't matter what kind of scumbaggery you start researching into. As soon as you start looking into it, you'll start to see the exact same patterns and the exact same sociopathic criminal psychopaths coming into view.
Yeah, exactly. But what parents don't realise is if they all came together with me, or from across the world, and across Australia, across New Zealand, and found out what the MSDSs are, put the demand on, it would be over. But they just think, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want the principal to be upset with me. I don't want blah, blah, blah. I don't want to. But yeah, I can't do it on my own. You know what it's like. It's like everyone goes, oh, you do it, Vinny.
I love that when it happens, man. It's like, hey,
Picks you off after a while.
no, I don't want to go and get the MSDS when I can have BS delivered for free.
Exactly.
For F's sake.
I know, and it's that simple. If we even had 500 parents walking the streets, but no, I get them all say, well, oh, you're doing a great job, Angela. Keep doing it. And then you get your attackers, who obviously a very small minority, but they're being paid. But I had one woman say that apparently I'm a conspiracy theorist, and she put all this stuff. Apparently she was saying that, anyway, it's just amazing that when you're doing the right thing, you're trying to protect other people's children as well, that they'll attack you.
That's right. Right, we're coming to a break now. Angela, I want to thank you very much for joining me here today. The Gourmet Soap Kitchen in Wagga Wagga. Google that or go to the banner on the homepage of the VinnieEastwoodshow.com. You can get some of that wonderful soap and products and all sorts of stuff shipped out here straight from Aussie, the pristine, the beautiful place to mine gold and uranium. We'll be right back. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of the Vinnie Eastwood Show, broadcasting on AmericanFreedomRadio.com for your listening pleasure. Tonight, we have a woman who does not work construction, although her name would suggest it. It's Angela. Forman from the Gourmet Soap Kitchen in Wagga Wagga, named after the mating call of a cane toad. Wagga Wagga. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Vinny. How you going? Nice to talk to you online, on radio. It's been a couple of years. What's it been, a year and a half, 2 years?
It has been, and we have been enjoying your soap products ever since. It's funny, my wife was just saying, hey, Vinny, we're about to run out of Angela's wonderful soap.
Package ready to go off because you can't live without it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to stay clean, especially if your job is to deal with the filth of society. So, speaking of which, there's been a long time between shows with you, and we have one segment here to run a brief catch-up. What would you like to talk about today?
First of all, I don't know if you want to fill people in on what happened with my daughter's chemical poisoning with the Department of Education in Australia,